the main challenge is just what should I write in there when you're talking about like document, like what should I document, what is important and what isn't. And the advice that I would always give is just write anything that comes to mind as you go, because you can always go back to edit it and take out things. But it's harder for you to remember the little things that you did a while ago if you don't document it. So I'll just say document it. Yes, it is challenging to remember to do it. It's challenging also because you think like it's an additional task for you to embark on, making your to-do list a little bit longer.
Being mindful, the documentation is important, because if it is not documented, it didn't happen, right? So having that black and white process is important, not only for learning, but also for transparency. Not only to myself or the research, but also funders in relation to time, in relation to data management. Documentation is very important, and it's part of accountability and transparency.
Dr. Kranza likes to encourage doing memos sort of right away after an interview when it's fresh, and then also thinking about it a little bit later. And so one of the challenges is just, even for myself, like remembering to do it, remembering what you're writing, and also not thinking about it during your interview as well, because you want to be there and engaging, and you don't, and for myself, like sometimes I'm thinking like, oh, I don't want to forget this, but then that takes away from the moment. So I think finding that balance of when you're going to do that documentation and being in the moment and remembering what you're going to remember, I think that's one of the biggest challenges.
We have been discussing how time is a really big issue for us in terms of integrating that in our RDM practices. And I find that for me, that's kind of been the biggest challenge, just making sure that if I have set out 2 hours, to work on a particular project, that I make sure that I dedicate the last 10 to 15 minutes of that work session to do any documentation, update any READMEs, make sure that I'm storing everything in the right place and that I'm being quite consistent, because it can be very easy to just end up hoarding a bunch of documents on your computer and just closing off for the day because you spent quite a bit of time working on a project. So just making sure that I am doing all the steps that need to be done on a consistent basis, that's been a little bit of a challenge for me, I would say.
Once you get into it, so once you start doing it and you think about it as it being part of the research process in itself, then it shouldn't be a big deal, like it shouldn't be any problem at all.
We know research is an evolving thing, so you plan a very nice and then very appropriate research design, but when you get to the field, it's a different story altogether. So we are guided by that, and then as and when it's appropriate, because we'll be connected in one way or the other, all field workers, all student researchers in the field will be connected. So if there's a need, if one run into a challenge and I think that the method used is not feasible within that context, then we'll put heads together and then see how to navigate that, and maybe modify the questions or the protocol, and then try to also introduce that to areas that even the earlier protocol work, and then to see the variations of data that we'll get.
So I think field notes would be central to understanding, some of the bigger data set, right? And I think, if you want to really deal with the 500 or 600 transcripts, I think the first point will be just to read the field notes or the summaries or whatever, researchers are submitting every day or every week based on their experience on the field. And I think that would help make it easier when you are approaching the larger data set. So I think that's really a way we can approach the meta nature of this data.
Just include as much information as you would find helpful in looking for data, including making sure that data is standardized is just really good from a data quality standpoint as well. So metadata practices make your research better and hopefully let it be more findable by other researchers and more usable by other researchers.
This series is brought to you by Spark, a Center for Social Research Innovation.